Hello, everyone. My name is Mike Dice, back with the Extra Rounds podcast, coming to you just a few days before Christmas. As always, my co-host,
Elias Cepeda. It's so awesome to be back with you, Mike.
Yes, it's exciting to be back. I'm very glad that I was able to make it back after a couple weeks away. Missed it, but I enjoyed watching Jimmy. Jimmy did well filling in, and Joe Lazone calling in was a good guest, as always.
Great dude.
First multiple time guest.
I think that might be right. I think Joe might be the first person to be on the show twice.
We'll have to send him a plaque.
We got to. Yeah, we should. He's awesome. I bet he'll take a photo of it.
So we had some guests lined up, but it's a holiday week. Some things happened, and plans changed. So no worries. It'll just be us taking time to talk and look back at UFC on Fox in Sacramento and everything that happened there, and then taking time to look forward to UFC 207 and kind of just talking all things MMA. Just the two of us. So if you do have questions, please feel free to drop them into the chat. We'll be watching that closely, and we'll answer your questions as they come along. So anyways, let's first talk about UFC on Fox 22.
Yeah.
The numbers came in, and it was wildly successful.
Sure was.
4.38, I think, was the number million views on Fox.
And the main event, peaked there. And I think they averaged over 3.5 million for the main card. It's huge numbers.
Right. So were you surprised by that?
I can't say I predicted it.
I mean, this was a card headlined by a fight between two women, which isn't very frequent that we've seen.
No, it's true. And there was a lot of criticism of the UFC as well in terms of, hey, how does not just the main event, but like the co-main being Mickey Gall versus Sage Northcutt, while Uriah Faber was third from the top, who he was clearly the biggest star, most accomplished fighter on that card, and he was in his hometown. So there was a lot of criticism there, and I was curious if it would work well. Like, as a viewer, I wasn't in Sacramento, but as a viewer, even though I enjoyed the last two fights, the climax was definitely Faber, right? That fight and that win for him and his ovation. And so I wondered, is the TV audience dropping off, or are they sticking around because they're so stoked? They stuck around, and more of them came around for it in the main event, it turned out.
Well, that makes you wonder if they're going to change the way that they book things because of that effect, Though it's interesting because at WrestleMania 30, not to compare this to wrestling, but I do it. Man. It's like a weekly thing that I do. At WrestleMania 30, The Undertaker had this streak. He had gone 20 plus events without losing, and he lost, and it sucked the air out of the place. And if he had lost, that might have been the situation.
That's a really good
point. But him winning and him pretty much dominating, I think he's won on two judges' scorecards, 30-26. Or am I getting
at least one of the judges' scorecards? He got dropped late in the third, but other than that, he definitely dominated.
So it was exciting. If he had lost, it might have changed things.
Good point. I hadn't thought about that.
Right. It's a gamble if but it's, people were concerned about it online on Twitter, and Ariel Helwani was reminding people that Uriah Faber announced it was his retirement match after they had already kind of set the card in stone, which, surely had they known going into it and after, before having promised somebody the main event or the co-main, they probably would have changed things up a little bit so that he would have gotten the main event spot.
I wonder, or if they wanted to use his excitement to take that gamble and promote others, I'm curious. Hey, we were already watching Uriah. There's someone else fighting? All right, let's check that out.
But it makes you wonder, it doesn't make you wonder. It just makes you realize how great of a person Uriah Faber is. And, he gets criticized by Dominic Cruz for constantly pushing his people and his team, but it's genuine. And, he probably could have taken Paige out of the spotlight if he wanted to.
Right.
I'm sure the UFC would have done it. Perhaps maybe they even asked, but he kept her in that spotlight and let her get the rub from it. So
and it benefits him too. People have pointed out, Dominic Cruz has usually pointed this out as an insult, but it's no insult that this stuff, especially if Uriah's retiring, he manages people like Sage, is my understanding, or at least he has an ownership stake in the management company that manages them. So, it serves him well, and financially. And I don't know Uriah Faber personally, but I bet he also doesn't he wasn't offended. People were offended for him, but it doesn't sound like. He doesn't seem. I mean, the dude seems to have a really healthy. Again, only observing him from the outside and occasional interviews, he seems to have a really healthy sense of things, and I think he doesn't have like he doesn't let perceived slights kind of build up. I mean, again, I know him and Dwayne Ludwig, have had their feud and stuff, but who knows the details of that, right? Other than that, he seems like a really positive dude, and it doesn't seem like he would have minded too much. In addition to it maybe benefiting him financially later.
Also on Instagram or Snapchat or Twitter, I don't know. There's so many social media things, but somewhere he was posting a video of him in Paige's room while she was getting ready for her fight. So like his fight was over and he was back in there ready to cheer her on too.
He's a real team captain and a real coach. Like he's not that. It's not just his gym doesn't just use his name, right? Like a branding thing or licensing thing. He's the guy there, from all I understand.
But speaking of which, you mentioned the feud with Dwayne Ludwig, and one of the themes of the night was burying the hatchet. Mm-hmm. We saw him and Dominic Cruz sit side by side at the table. Months ago they were talking trash leading up to their fight at UFC 199, but they were sitting next to each other, being cordial, friendly. For those of you who don't know, the rivalry kind of goes back to when they fought the first time, and Dominic Cruz signed over his face on a poster for back in the WEC. Yeah. And Cruz had a poster that was signed, but without him signing on Faber's face, and gave it to him on the show, which was a nice moment. And then TJ Dillashaw, former teammate, congratulated him and said, all bullcrap aside, respect, you're a legend, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So did you enjoy watching those?
I did. I wish all living legends like Uriah Faber were able to get that type of send-off. It was so cool to actually see so much of the broadcast really center on him. Constantly, the broadcasters constantly talking about favorite Uriah Faber moments. People bringing in, going out of their way, on their own and social media and interviews to talk about it. I did enjoy seeing that because, I'm not one of these observers that thinks, hey, I'm offended by these guys talking trash. Like in my mind, whether or not there was any one particular incident that sparked something, why in the hell would Dominic Cruz and Uriah Faber ever be friends? They shouldn't. Like they're competing against each other for so many years. They shouldn't like each other. That's okay, right? But once the competition is gone from them, at least direct, there's still a lot of indirect competition. Uriah Faber's one of his proteges is going to be fighting Dominic Cruz for his title in a couple of weeks at 207. But once that direct competition's gone, although they may never be boys and may never be like friends, it's good to be like, yeah, we did that. I'm not saying I apologize for anything, but we did that together, and I respect that, and cool,
But there is still some competition because
indirectly,
it's Garbrandt's Faber's guy fighting,
and Faber didn't let him forget that. Like Cruz was really classy, and Faber was like, "Yeah, I hope he keeps it together after my boy gets at him." So there's alpha male alliance, like butting of heads, but it's not like he doesn't have to go out insulting him personally. That's cool. I like that. That is good because. That stuff was probably just for competition. They don't know each other probably closely, but they have competing interests directly, right? So when that's gone, at least a little bit directly, you can be like, I respect what we did. You can let people know that you always respected that guy, even if you don't like that guy.
Speaking of which, since we're just kind of wheeling and dealing, freestyling today, well, it's a natural segue. Garbrandt and Cruz had their on-screen interview.
Oh, that was amazing.
Which was, would you say amazing?
It was so good.
It was interesting.
It was
so you liked it.
It was so garbled.
Well, I mean, so watching it at home, you couldn't hear. Half of it was blurped out.
Right,
I watched it back on Fox's YouTube page, which was uncensored. And I think the censors were just a little overeager for the most part listening to it.
There was so little profanity.
There's a couple shit.
Yeah, right.
It wasn't that bad. It was just a lot of talking over each other. But I think after everything that happened with Nate Diaz, they're just ready to go.
Yeah.
Not so roughly a year ago when he went on that tirade against Conor McGregor.
Absolutely.
So, but what did you think? A lot of people thought it was just awkward and silly and stupid. You thought it was...
Well, it was awkward, silly, and stupid, and it was also amazing.
Neither one of them is really good at talking trash. Naturally,
I think Dominic Cruz is sublimely good. He's really mean. Like he's a really mean bully, and he'll do cutting things. They're not highbrow, but he'll do really mean things or
Seeing like
say
he's
really
like
mean things to guys.
He's going for the knees.
Yeah, he's all low blows. Whether it's in Instagram and he's trash talking Cody Garbrandt's girlfriend, like
I didn't see that.
Yeah, like a couple weeks ago, he does. I'm not saying it's sophisticated, but he really tries to
Sophomore.
Yeah, and he'll do it. But he's quick witted, and he's a smooth talker, but he'll go lowbrow with that. So you've got the high and low. He does whatever he thinks he can really cut. He'll bring up stuff that no one's supposed to know about. He does it all the time. He's talking about supposedly Cody being knocked down in the gym, which is stuff people don't talk about. He's talking about Uriah Faber's income stream as a manager, which they don't talk much about publicly. He's talking to someone's girlfriend. He goes lowbrow, but he does it to really, because he wants a Cody Garbrandt that's wild, so he can control that fight. So it is stupid. It is sophomore and silly, but it was kind of funny.
At least they're past the whole daddy issues thing
that
was going on back in 202. Now, see, that's interesting about that is those like. I think Cody Garbrandt's been very open about his upbringing.
Yeah.
I did a story on it, and I know I've seen other stories done about it. But Cruz hasn't come from the best situations either, which was kind of baffling when that was going on. And I was kind of happy to see, like, at least we're past that part, because I was like, what are you talking about, Dominic? Like,
he's not trying to be fair. He's just trying to be a jerk and get someone irritated and embarrassed in public.
But with like when it was like Faber and he's like, oh, you have a big chin, it's just like, come on, like this is just weak.
Oh yeah, I think Faber doesn't get rattled by that stuff. I think he's hoping Cody Garbrandt, who's very young and doesn't. I don't know how he is as a person. I don't know what kind of mind he's got, but he's probably different than Uriah Faber. He's less experienced. He's probably hoping it'll rattle him. So yeah, I don't think it was like really sophisticated, but I think it was effective at getting Cody Garbrandt flustered. He may turn that frustration into something very, very positive for himself. But he knows Dominic Cruz, especially if he knows he's more verbal than someone. Uriah can speak well. If he knows he's more verbal than like Cody Garbrandt, he's gonna not only try to talk quicker than him, he's also gonna comment on it. He said, I've heard him say things like, "Oh, Cody Garbrandt's as smart as a brick" or something like that, like mean things. He talks like a mean middle schooler, and I don't like it, but it's kind of hilarious to see it kind of break down to where you have John Anik, who's ostensibly, who I like a lot, is ostensibly interviewing them, and he says nothing the whole time because these guys are just garbling over each other.
Having talked to Garbrandt for that piece, one of the tent poles of it was him always fighting against bullies. Mm-hmm. And I think that kind of plays into why he might not be a natural trash talker, as some people might have seen. It's because he's not the kind of person who wants to trash talk. He doesn't want to bully people. Yeah. He wants to stand up for the guy who's being bullied.
Yeah, that makes sense.
He's in a situation where he's having to do it verbally right now, but having talked to him and heard stories from his past, it's not something that he's handled verbally in the past. Mm-hmm. And he told a story when I was interviewing him about fighting being a freshman. He's a freshman in high school. He's like on the varsity wrestling team. He's competing for a state championship that weekend. And there's a special needs student who he said was really nice and friendly. And every morning would just kind of go around and say hello and what's up to people, just really positive, always, had the best outlook on life. And Cody stressed that particularly, that he had the best outlook on life. And some people were making fun of him. And he just goes over, grabs this kid, and starts pummeling him. And one of the teachers was the wife of the wrestling coach, pulled Cody off of him and was like, you can't be doing this. You're competing for a state championship this weekend. What if you get in trouble or suspended, blah, 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 blah. Kind of saved him from himself a little bit in that moment. Or he ended up going on to win the state title that weekend. But that's how he goes about handling it. That's what he goes about handling bullies. So
good for him. I love that story.
It looks like he might have been rattled just because he's not accustomed to fighting bullies with words.
Yeah. That's a really great distinction.
But it hasn't affected him in his fighting.
Yeah, he probably handles it fine once it comes down to fight night.
So I'm not ready to say that Cody's rattled just because he's accustomed to hearing words from bullies and handling it with his fists.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
Before we continue talking on about UFC on Fox 22, we've invited everybody who's watching in the chat to ask questions, and we'll get to it. We have 2 questions from a guy named Bob. I'm going to butcher his last name. Carrere. It sounds Portuguese or Brazilian.
What's up, Bob?
Anyways, his first question is, with 209 coming around the corner, how much should the UFC pay to have Nate on that card. Keep in mind, I don't think it matters who he fights. First of all, the fact that UFC 209 is not happening in Stockton is, or Northern California in general, is kind of a crime in itself.
right.
Vegas isn't that far, but still, could you imagine if it was UFC Sacramento 209?
Yeah, that would have been pretty cool.
I think that they should absolutely have they should stock it with talent from that pool.
Yeah.
Gilbert Melendez, who hasn't fought for a while.
Yeah.
Nate Diaz. Nick is supposedly ready to come back.
Right. Supposedly he wants on that card.
Yeah. Nick Diaz, Nate Diaz. And now I know they don't like to fight on the same card, and I don't think that they ever have really, or the instances are few and far between. So the chances of getting them both on the card might not happen. But Diaz, Melendez, you can get some other people, lower down the card. Chris Avila or whatever.
Sure.
Maybe some other Team Alpha Male guys.
Yeah, I think it's a fun idea. I think they should, and I think they should pay generally Nate and Nick Diaz.
They do it when they're like in Australia or England or Ireland. They stock it with natural talent.
No, it's true. And now this is like a conceptual thing. It's like they're not going to be in Northern California. Had they been, they would have been cool to like go to the 209, but like still go with someone identified as that. I think they should pay Nate a lot of money to come back and fight at any point.
209 in MMA is just synonymous with Diaz. That card has to be headlined by Diaz. And I would be perfectly okay with that card, which is the first of a doubleheader because it's the one in Vegas, right? In early March. I'd be fine with that card being headlined by a Diaz non-title fighter.
Sure. They're huge enough stars that they don't titles need to be on the line. Like they're similar to Conor McGregor, especially Nate. Just have Nate fight, and it's going to be huge numbers.
Diaz Silva was 182, I think.
Yep.
No title on the line.
Yeah.
Of course, Diaz McGregor at 196 and 202, no title either.
Yeah.
So,
if you're not going to have a title, you need to have some of the biggest stars. And Nick and Nate are two of the biggest stars and the biggest draws the UFC has, regardless of what Dana White says when he's negotiating with them. They should pay. They should pay him whatever it takes, man, to get him on that card. Or any card, Rob, in my opinion, or Bob, in my opinion.
Here's the thought. Could you see them doing Diaz McGregor 3?
Well, listen,
the lightweight title, UFC 209.
If maybe not a 209, but if they like money, yes, because both men want that fight. After 202, they both called each other out and said, "Let's do this." They hugged and they said, "Let's do it." Right. Those numbers beat 196's numbers, which had beaten just about every other numbers. So you got the fans asking for it. Now you have the chance with a lightweight title to have even higher stakes than that rivalry, which in itself is probably produced the most heat that the UFC has ever seen. So why in the hell wouldn't you do it?
Of course, there's the rumor Conor McGregor wants to take a break, but Conor McGregor said that's not true. So that it's been some uncertainty whether this break is an actual thing. That
he doesn't know.
If the UFC didn't do it, it's because they'd save it for their July big, which is like a huge temple for them. Always,
that's true.
Which is what I could see them saving it for. But
when is 209? What's the date of that?
March 4th or 5th.
Okay,
it's like early March.
Got you. So it's not the Super Bowl weekend because that's a huge one too.
Super Bowl weekend's actually not a pay-per-view this year. It's a fight night in Houston.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
I forget. I think they've announced who's
that's interesting.
Main eventing or who's on that. I don't remember, but
I lost. That went under my radar.
Yeah, the 208 is the 11th in Brooklyn.
That's right. Cool. I think that would be. I think that's the fight.
But
to make
interesting.
If Ronda Rousey can come back for a title fight, Nate can fight.
Well, the
Conor.
UFC Fight Night Super Bowl weekends in Houston, and the Super Bowl's in Houston, which I think is interesting too.
That's a new strategy for sure.
Yeah.
Is it gonna? Can they glean some of that off? Because those are. I mean, you've been to these. Are people spending so much money at a Super Bowl that they've got no more money to I'll buy another $1,000 UFC ticket?
A lot of the people who go to the Super Bowl are. I think it's one of those things where a lot of people come to the city anyways, regardless of whether they're going to the Super Bowl, just because there's activities. And I'm basing this mostly having lived in Dallas, which hosted a Super Bowl. But also they have things like the Fan Fest and like those kind of festivities. There's a lot of things going on for fans that I think if you're in the region, you kind of come to experience it and be a part of it, even though you might not be able to go in. The other thing is a lot of the people who are going are, one, wealthy.
Yeah.
And Two, a lot of it is, corporate sponsors getting, chunks of tickets and then giving them out to like business people.
That could conceivably work.
So like if you work with Motorola and Motorola's a sponsor, Motorola's got like however many tickets and they give them to like, hey, you're the head of buying at Best Buy or AT&T, so I'm be our guest because
that's true. It gives them an opportunity Saturday night to add a bunch of
right. So like there's all these people in town and it's like what else are you gonna do? No offense to Houston. Houston on a Saturday night, like besides from just going out to the bar, it's like you're there, there's this UFC fight, like it's something else to kind of do.
That's a really good point. You know what they used to do in Ohio with it says this will be a version of this old thing on like steroids, but they had the Arnold's Classic, which is martial arts, it started with bodybuilding and all sorts of stuff in Columbus, Ohio. They do it every year. In that fitness, martial arts, bodybuilding community, it's like strength community. It's gigantically huge, right? It's the biggest thing of the year. Well, the UFC for a number of years did when they went into Ohio, they started doing it that same weekend. There was great synergy there, like really good. They did cross promotional stuff and it worked there. But they actually like actual partnership with the Arnolds. But it's interesting.
To parlay this back to wrestling, I've gone to WrestleMania every year for like 5 years in a row. And one of the things that they do is they have like the Hall of Fame event Saturday. Yeah. Then they have like an NXT, which is like their kind of like indie circuit, like their what I guess you could call like their minor league. Like they have a show on Friday, and then aside from and then they have like their convention, which is kind of like Fight Week is for the UFC. So like they have that going on. So it becomes this thing where you don't just fly in Sunday and go to WrestleMania. You're there for days, and meeting people. And consequently, all these other indie wrestling circuits, and I'm not a huge wrestling fan to know a lot of them, they all come and they're hosting events in venues around the city too, because all these wrestling fans are flocking to this place. So all these wrestling fans are coming. Not necessarily all are going to WrestleMania, but they're there to go to all the other things.
Yeah, that could work well then.
That being said, we're getting a lot of questions.
Awesome.
So let's
keep them coming.
Get to it. Bob says his name was French. I was wrong.
Ah, cool.
Sorry.
It kind of reminded me of that.
It kind of reminded me of, yeah.
They're both Romance languages, right? Portuguese and French.
Yes.
So is that
yeah,
better?
Send it phonetically or whatever.
Yeah.
But it reminded me, it kind of looks like the spelling kind of reminded me of the Pitbull's last name.
Oh, Frieri.
Yeah. That's kind of what
yeah, that's cool.
He hit us up with another question. I'm hearing McGregor might be coming back sooner than May to fight for the 170 belt. Do you guys see that happening before he defends the 155 belt?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any specific knowledge on that, Bob, but he did tell BTE Sport, he got this Sportsman of the Year award out in Europe, and he told them, he's like, I don't know where this 10 months is coming from. I wrote a little bit about this at Champions this weekend, and he said, I thought the baby's going to be born in March. My baby's going to be born in May now, so I don't know, but I can come back sooner. So, yeah, that's up for grabs. In terms of welterweight, I mean, Woodley was just talking about Conor again, kind of warning him. I think as far as I know, it seems like all things are open possibilities at this point. I'm really interested to see if Conor sticks to his demands for equity in the UFC, whether it's being given it for a sweat, so to speak, whether it's he has an opportunity to buy in. That will be the question, because right now no one's taking that serious. Everyone's like, who's going to fight next? Right. And we were forgetting that he's like, I'm never fighting again for the UFC unless I would get equity stakes. So I'm curious. I think if he fights, Bob, I think anything is possible. I would hope his coaches would talk him out of fighting for the 170 title. I don't think those are great fights for him. But he does a lot of things that don't make a lot of sense, and he makes them work for him. So I wouldn't be shocked.
I don't know. Him and Tyron Woodley, I just think it's a bad matchup.
I do.
For him.
I think him against Wonder Boy is bad. I think him against Maya. I think him against most people at 170 is not amazing.
I mean, what do you think his best chance would be if Cerrone happens to get the title?
Yeah, probably. They're not so far out of one another's their frames. You know? Yeah.
Tyron Woodley, I think, is vastly underrated. By the way, he the way he was supporting Sage Northcutt on social media during his fight. He's very big on this "I got your back" thing, and having gone to Rufus Sport and seen it first person, it's a really thing that's taken off within that team.
That's cool.
And I don't think he gets enough credit in the public for the person that he is. He tries to do his own version of Embedded on his YouTube channel where he kind of lets people in and sees his life. He posted a video recently of him being in a Christmas parade or something. But he's a good person and who's genuinely concerned about his teammates. And for some reason he's gotten labeled as the heel or one of these people in the UFC. For some reason people aren't rallying around him the way that they do other fighters or champions.
Yeah.
And like with Wonder Boy, like people rally around Wonder Boy, but people aren't rallying around Woodley, and I think it's just interesting, and it kind of baffles me.
Well, there's a lot of racism in the world, and there's a lot of racism in the fight game, and I wouldn't be surprised if a great deal of people's reticence to arbitrarily not rally behind Woodley certainly has to do with that, because I see, this is just anecdotal, but I see lots of comments on forums. I'm on the underground a lot. People will say things of Woodley that aren't true, but fill stereotypes like, oh, he's lazy, oh, he's entitled, oh, he's always complaining, oh, he's some type of thug. Listen, I don't that doesn't really make any sense,
Pettis comes from a background which wasn't great,
right.
Makes something of himself, opens restaurants and gyms and all sorts of businesses in Milwaukee, and he's a hero.
Yeah.
Tyron Woodley's done the same thing.
Yeah.
He's come out of Ferguson,
right?
Horrible neighborhood. He's gone back to Ferguson to give back to the community, and he's opened up his own businesses to try and set up a future for his family. And he's still vilified.
Well, I bet people there like him, but yeah, no, I agree. I agree. It is. And he's let's talk like the superficial stuff. He's a great looking dude. He's very marketable.
Movies.
Yeah, but he's had to do, like he told us, he had to do a lot of this himself. I think this is something I've talked about, in private and written a little bit about, but I think the UFC has the best promotional apparatus in the fight game. And I think they're not very. I don't think they're racist, but I think they don't feel comfortable. I'm speaking broadly. They don't feel comfortable marketing black athletes by and large. That is, they just don't know. Like, I see people who fit a certain opportunity set, like Woodley, great looking family guy, exciting fighter, well spoken, and they don't do an amazing job of promoting him. But we see him do broadcasts, and he's great there. And if the UFC helped him get that, that's phenomenal. But they just don't feel comfortable doing it. But yet they'll fall all over unproven talent who has a halfway decent smile if they're young and white. So I think they're just uncomfortable promoting black athletes, and I think that's part of why he doesn't get the attention he deserves. He has to do it all on his own.
And, he's been doing it on his own, and it's successful, and it's only going to continue to bring him more success.
For sure.
But, the other thing is he's very, relaxed with fans, too. There's when he was on the Fox desk on UFC Tonight, shortly after the Thompson fight at UFC 205, people were commenting on how, I think I actually took a screenshot and tweeted something out, was doesn't look like there's a mark on Woodley's face.
Right.
And one of the fans was, chimed in. He's like, well, he's wearing makeup. And Tyron Woodley was like, just a little bit. You know what I mean? He chimed in, but he was honest and kind of being funny. He didn't have to snap back at this guy. He was like, this guy's trying to take a shot at him. And he's like, yeah, I am wearing a little bit of makeup and it's helping. Thanks for noticing. But still, he's the bad guy.
He's doing everything right, basically, and naturally, yeah. And
we'll have to get him on.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometime. He's awesome.
Maybe before his next fight. Who would be another 2-time guest? And
yeah,
if we could get him on a third time.
We got to make it happen.
Take that crown too.
Yeah, that's right. I'm sure that's his number one objective in his career too.
Christopher Simmons asks, "Do you think Anderson Silva is one of the greatest of all time?" I think he is one of the greatest of all time.
Yeah, definitely, Christopher. Yeah, he, many people consider him the best of all time, and I think he's one of those guys that needs to be in an argument and will always be in the argument of, oh, is he the top guy? And someone will say, well, no, not him, GSP, or no, Randy Couture, cool, or BJ Penn, fine. But he is always in that conversation. Skill-wise, yep, he improved such a great deal. He was an exciting, dynamic fighter when he fought in Brazil, when he fought in Pride, but he was up and down. By the time he got to Europe and then he came to the UFC, he was just another beast. He improved so much. And then he continued to work on things like his jiu-jitsu off his back or his wrestling when he hit that switch on Nate Marquardt. His skill-wise, he was phenomenal. He was just and then entertaining, and then his accomplishments back that up.
Could you imagine if he spoke better English?
Oh man, it's crazy. If he would have spoken English his whole career, he would have duplicated what he did in Brazil. We don't have a great sense, I'm sure, of what his fame is like, but the man is by all accounts a multimillionaire. Brazil, if we just talked at the top of the show, Mike, about the numbers of UFC on Fox 22, great numbers, peaked at over 4 million. In Brazil, Cyborg's last fight, I think was watched by 20 million people in Brazil. So Anderson Silva is a huge star. He helped open up, along with guys like Vitor Belfort, the market in Brazil, and he's got the accomplishments to back it up. So Anderson is definitely one of the best ever. The question is he the best fighter ever? Is he the most accomplished ever? Because he's up there, man. There's a good argument for that.
So piggybacking off that, Lennon says, and where would you rank Brock Lesnar among greatest of all time?
Pound for pound, accomplishments. I think pound, like I'll put it. We always talk about pound for pound. So meaning like if all things being equal weight wise, if someone could fight, like if BJ Penn could fight, Randy Couture, and they were the same size, who would win? BJ Penn and Randy Couture sparred together, which I've never seen, but Randy said that he couldn't take BJ down, which is crazy. But by the way, if I look at Lesnar's accomplishments on like a year, I don't know, some type of phrase I'll make up, year by year, meaning like each year this person spent in MMA, what kind of impact did they make? In terms of accomplishments, it's huge. You can dissect his skill and his technique all we want, other than his wrestling, but he beat Frank Mir, who's one of the most accomplished heavyweights in MMA history. He beat Randy Couture, who I feel is the most accomplished heavyweight in MMA history. He beat other really great fighters like interim title champ Shane Carwin, Heath Herring. So
while battling diverticulitis.
Yeah, exactly. Which
we never really got to see him in his prime.
It would appear we didn't, right? Like I can't imagine what that's like. You can, I can't. Like it's tough, you know.
We can't also assume that he would have been more dominant than he was either.
No, I mean like his accomplishments and like for the time he put and not to say nothing of the business that he brought in, put him up there. If I look at skill, do I say, oh well, he's one of the most skilled guys outside of wrestling? In MMA, well, no, I wouldn't say that. I'd say I would rank 100 people above him in terms of like well-roundedness and stuff. But
his impact is undeniable.
His impact, his accomplishments are undeniable, and his efficacy is. Listen, he doesn't have to be as precise as Anderson Silva if he can get the job done with the skills he has and the physicality that he's got.
He was the star at a time when Anderson Silva and Georges St. Pierre were champions.
Yeah, absolutely.
He was the draw.
Yeah, he sure was.
For that, he brought in a lot of fans.
Yeah.
Much in the way that Conor McGregor's bringing in a lot of fans now.
Absolutely. So he deserves. I think Brock Lesnar deserves more credit for his accomplishments than he gets from like supposedly hardcore fans.
Yao Ming getting in the NBA Hall of Fame. Like he didn't have the best career number-wise in the NBA. Injuries and stuff kind of derailed it, but he still got in the Hall of Fame because of the impact he made on the sport overseas. And the Chinese market and those things. Brock Lesnar's much in the same way. He doesn't have maybe the best resume in terms of fighting, but he impacted the sport in a way that almost a few less than a handful of people have. Yeah, and that makes him in the discussion.
I think so.
Thanks for the question, Lennon. Lennon has another question, which is, what are the chances that Conor McGregor will fight Floyd Mayweather? This won't go away.
Yeah, and the fighters are continuing to talk about it. So
would I buy the pay-per-view?
Yeah, right.
Today.
Yeah, I'd pay $300 to watch him fight in MMA. Boxing, I'll watch it on Sunday because I know how that's going.
Do you think it happens?
I think I don't think it's going to happen. Here's why I don't think it'll happen. It's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen because I don't think Conor McGregor is going to have the guts outside the cage to actually fight this legally. He would have to do it. He's got a boxing license, and he would. I'm no lawyer, but who asked the question again?
Lennon.
Thank you, Lennon. Thanks again. I'm no lawyer, but it appeared to me that Conor would have to say, as a boxer, now that I'm licensed in California, the largest state in the union, I'm covered by the Ali Act, and this contract that I have with the UFC. It doesn't abide by the federal rules we have, the federal law we have in the Ali Act, so I can get free of this to box. He can, basically, for layman speak, he can kind of make the argument, hey, what other non-MMA thing can the UFC dictate I do? Can I not become a carpenter? Can I not become a plumber? Can I not paint? What other thing can you do when I'm an independent contractor and not even an employee? I don't think no one yet has fought there's no Kurt Flood of MMA yet that's willing to get blackballed, willing to lose their career to fight for something like free agency.
Georges St. Pierre.
Yeah, I love that he's out there talking about it. We'll see what they do. George has the potential. He has the cash and the profile to do it. He seems to have the will. We'll see. I don't think it'll happen for that reason. I do think that I don't think a lot of the things the way that the UFC does business can stand up to legal scrutiny in the end, but I think they have more money to fight it in court for more years than most fighters have or are willing to spend. So I don't think it's likely that it's going to happen, no.
The other thing is we know that Conor McGregor's not above the publicity stunt to negotiate.
Yeah, neither is Floyd Mayweather.
Remember the whole retiring thing?
Yeah.
You know, same thing.
I think so. I think he's bluffing. I think he's trying to get leverage, and I think he's smart enough to realize, this will get him attention. Now, I think he would fight Floyd, sure. I don't think he's scared, and I think he'll take the money
for the kind of money that he can get.
It would have to be a lot, man.
I mean, even like he keeps demanding $100 million, and
Right.
there's no way Floyd gives it to him because there's no
Right.
way that you're paying $200 million out to two fighters for a fight. Like that just gets to the point where it's not profitable.
It's
for
probably
anybody.
not going to happen, no.
But if you gave him $40 million, which would still be more than most Mayweather's opponents got, what did he fight, like Miguel Cotto? And Miguel Cotto like only made $1 million.
No, Miguel's a big draw. He probably made like 10 or 12, but other guys have made like $1 million. Yeah.
And but still, if he made $40 million, then that's what he made all year in the UFC.
Yeah.
According to him.
Sure. No, I think so. I think he would definitely do it. You're right. And by the way, like I don't want to be too much of an instigator here, and it's a derail, but Floyd can't do big numbers without Manny Pacquiao or Conor McGregor right now. Like his last 2 ones haven't done well. His last one did 300,000. Like he can't. He's done big money numbers with big money fighters like Pacquiao, Cotto, De La Hoya was the first one to kick him off. But he can't draw like he used to.
He's never really sought out the big names either to fight.
Well, I mean, they come. Like he hasn't really avoided anyone. Like it took him way too long to fight Pacquiao, and maybe it was more Pacquiao's fault. But my point is, Conor McGregor is not wrong when he says right now he's the bigger draw. He is. If we look at the last, 2 years for Conor and the last 2 years of Floyd's career, he is. And not just because single fight numbers for pay-per-view, but also Conor's activity. Like, so he'll have 196 and then 202 numbers, which on their own start getting close to some of Floyd's best numbers. And he did them within 5 months of each other. Like, he makes more money for his promoter. He brings in more money. He brings in more eyes. He has more international appeal. Like,
right.
Conor right now is a bigger draw than Floyd Mayweather Jr. Now, I think together they can make huge money. But right now, Conor is the bigger draw.
I think there was an article on Bloody Elbow like a while ago after UFC 205 or something that talked about like how Conor McGregor's his pay-per-view numbers are like insane.
Yeah.
They said, I think they were saying that the pay-per-view numbers he's done this year combined top the pay-per-views like I think they were comparing it to 2010, which they said was which was the UFC's best year in terms of pay-per-view sales. I think they did like 7.9 million or something that year.
Jeez.
Obviously he didn't do that many by himself this year, but they were comparing him to the pay-per-views of Anderson Silva, GSP, and Brock Lesnar, and his 3 pay-per-views this year did more than all of their fights combined that year.
Wow.
Or something, or like doubled it. It was insane, the numbers. So he's definitely, he's a huge draw.
Yeah, he really is. He really is, and he's super active. I don't think it's likely to happen because I don't think he'll take on that fight at the end of the day.
Speaking of big draws, we have a question from Patrick Allen. If Ronda Rousey loses in her return, do you think she could be done fighting for good?
Yeah, I think it's possible. I don't have any insight into her head, but she's already talking about retirement. So when someone's already talking about it,
she already wanted to retire before she turned 31, and she turns 30 in February, I think.
Yeah, right. Very good point. So from the onset, she drew those kind of distinctions. Now specifically, she's talking about retiring soon. So for all we know, she may retire one way or the other after this. But yeah, it's a good question. I wonder if she would be more likely to retire, like if she's not sure when she'll retire, if she'd be more likely to retire off a loss or off a win. I don't know. I don't know about her psychology enough at all just to say that, but it's a good question. I think if she wins, she'd be very likely to retire. Maybe. Given that she's talking about retirement, that's a hell of a note to go out on,
Right. If she lost, it'd be hard. She's already she took so much time off after losing to Holly Holm, and she's somebody who takes everything really personally. And she
seems
really
that way.
Yeah, it seems that way. I guess I should say it seems because
no, I'm agreeing with you. Yeah, it does seem that way. Yeah.
But I don't know for a fact. But judging based off how she acted after the Holly Holm thing and feeling like the media turned on her and this and that, and you can debate whether the media did or didn't, but she was so accustomed to being hero and put on a pedestal that when she lost, she couldn't handle the scrutiny that came with it. And I feel like if she lost again, it could just be all that again. And I don't think I think it took a lot of her to kind of get past that and come back the media thing.
Yeah.
It'd be hard to see her do it a second time.
Right.
I think what's interesting though is if she wins, what does she do? What if Holly Holm beats Jermaine, and wins the featherweight title, which will be on the line at UFC 208 in February?
Right.
That's a whole nother conversation. But
I ranted about that enough last week.
Let's say Holm wins and Rousey wins. So now Rousey's the featherweight champion or bantamweight champion.
Yeah.
She could fight at featherweight, and she could also try and get revenge on Holly Holm.
Yeah.
Beat her, become the first woman to hold 2 UFC championships, and
different weights. Yeah.
at 2 different weight classes,
Yeah.
and she could then right off into the sunset, and she would be the first to do it simultaneously.
Yeah.
Because it would probably be her next fight.
Yeah.
If she won at 207.
Yeah.
So she'd be a simultaneous champion. So
Right.
those are 2 milestones that she, could add to her resume on Wikipedia and right off into the sunset. So I think what happened, if she loses, I see her walking away, and that just kind of sucks for the sport. But it's like, and if I win, I think there's something really compelling there.
I bet you're right. I bet she would want to do it.
2-time champion.
No, well,
in women's
Misha
for UFC.
Tate. Well, for the UFC, yeah, it's been around for like 6 months, so it's more significant
Tate,
to talk
if you
about.
Count Strikeforce.
You got to count it. She was. I mean, you count because they counted it when Ronda beat her for the title in the UFC. That was the world title. That was the lineal world title. The way Jose Aldo's, Dominic Cruz's, and the WEC.
They bring in the WEC stat so much,
right?
And now that was owned by Zuffa.
Yeah, that's why they do it.
Strikeforce.
Right.
Just you own Strikeforce now. Just incorporate it too, just like you do the WEC.
They should, and therein lies one of the responsibilities of the media, right? We do more, and we do that here, and you do that in your writing, your reporting. We bring in context. We don't just we're not just PR people, right? We have to give context to people like, hey, there was and is a world outside of the UFC, and they're the biggest leagues. There was a time where world titles are actually split among different promoters, just like it is in boxing now. So you do that. You do the hard work, the hard nerdy work of finding out who the lineal champion is, like you do in boxing, right? You do that kind of hard work. And yeah, Misha Tate was a 2-time world champion. Faber was a world champion, all that stuff. I think you're probably right that it would be too tempting for Ronda to not jump at it. If she wins and Holly wins, Ronda should be like, hey, congratulations, Holly. That's awesome. I'm be glad that Holly's not in her division anymore. Unless Holly Holm has lost a lot, that's a really bad matchup for Ronda Rousey. And I'm not even
Holly
being
Holm's
predictive
coming into
here.
this off of 2 losses.
She is, but she's stylistically, what she showed in that fight against Ronda will never make up the gap in striking. And I don't
think
know
Ronda Rousey could game plan for a Holly Holm rematch better.
She could, not with her current. Not if she trains the way she trains. No,
right.
She doesn't seem to train wrestling.
And
she does
another.
Yeah, right. I think she won't get the head. Even I'm sure they're training her to do it, but she won't have enough head movement to deal with it. She won't be able to angle out. I didn't predict Holly Holm to beat her, but what she showed in that fight was that she pops up too quickly. And she's too hard to take down for Ronda, and then she eats. Of course, she eats her up on the feet.
Her flaw is that she's gonna march forward and eat punches until she gets her hands on you.
Yeah.
The issue being it's like Tim Tebow throwing a football. She's got a slow windup.
Yeah.
So it's coming.
That's a great analogy.
So she cocks the hand, and Holmes she's already out before she throws that quick jab.
Yeah.
She steps out, circles away, and now Ronda Rousey's having to start again, and it's just a continual process.
Took a lot of damage. And she's got a puncher's chance because Ronda does have fast, powerful punching. She does. Her striking flaws are elsewhere. But she's got an arm bars, a submission artist, and a knockout puncher's chance, but that's a bad matchup. But I think you're right. I bet she would go for it, right? Like, she's a super competitor.
Right.
I bet she want to. Those who love her around her should say don't.
Right. So we have one last question from a good friend, Dennis, from Submission Radio. If you guys don't check in with Submission Radio, follow them, you need to.
Absolutely.
I've been a frequent guest. I think I've done 3 appearances.
That's awesome.
Twice on their show, calling in after fights, and then once in the Submission Radio lounge.
That's awesome.
After UFC 205.
I'm on this week's episode.
Yeah, you
really
called
stoked.
in after
after this past card. Yeah. These guys are awesome. They're really great. Yeah. They have great guests too.
He wants to know, why aren't you wearing a festive hat as well?
I have a festive heart, Dennis. Yeah. No, I didn't know. I didn't get the memo.
Christmas spirit.
I didn't get the memo. We could have had an NFC like battle here. I could have brought a Bears hat to remind everyone how awful they are. Yeah. Yeah. The boss throw me one here. This is just for you, Dennis, and it's momentarily, and this is about as long as it's gonna last. But there we go. There's the festivities have begun. I'm going over the headset. Mike's got under the headset, so we have dueling styles as well.
And he wants to know when I'm dropping off all the presents for children all over the world this year. I specialize. I'm the representative for Dallas, so it's very localized.
Micro shipment. That's not. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, we'll split the cookies in a moment. So before we go, we were gonna do kind of our Christmas wish list for MMA. Next year we'll do some. Next week we'll do some maybe like yearly awards and
I dig it.
Some resolutions for fighters. But Christmas is right around the corner, so Christmas wish list for MMA. It's kind of a broad thing to talk about.
Sure.
Maybe it's something that you want as a fan, or maybe something you want for a fighter. But what's your Christmas wish list?
Let's see. We talked about it earlier. Nate Diaz, Conor McGregor for the lightweight title, and then Khabib and Tony Ferguson subsequently getting title shots after that, like they've long deserved. Damian Maia getting a title shot in 2017. Conor McGregor, others, Tim Kennedy, George St. Pierre, taking their battles for fighter rights in 2017 strong and seeing how far they can get with it. Nick Diaz fighting again and not having to wait 16 years to see another one after that. So 2 Nick Diaz fights in 2017. That's on my wish list as well. That might cover it for now. How about you? What you got?
Bisping Silva rematch.
Oh, yeah, they're going at it again on Twitter. Yeah,
and it sold me.
Yeah,
I don't know that's necessarily was at my top of my list until I saw Anderson Silva. But given the way that Silva fought Bisping, and a lot of people felt that he won in February,
I scored it for him.
Like you could see that happening, and I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah,
and they do have good trash talk, like at the gym when Bisping was trying to taunt Anderson, and Anderson was just kind of like, I know, I'm sorry, I was the champion for a long time.
I've got to tell you a story about Bisping trying to get me in trouble for me covering that, by the way, one day.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, but go on.
I think Diaz, McGregor 3 would be something. Diaz fight would be good. Damian Maia deserves a shot, but I kind of want to see Donald Cerrone win because I think it adds some interesting element.
He's up there.
He's a big star, cult star, much in the way that Diaz is, and he hasn't gotten a push. He'd be somebody. So seeing him get a title shot would be interesting too. I kind of want to keep seeing the Mickey Gall hype train go. I like that. That's pretty much it. I guess I would like to see a Rousey win and see her kind of return to prominence because it makes things more exciting. And Cyborg needs a featherweight title shot. I think that's...
Yeah, I should have put that on my list. Yeah, considering how much I gripe about that.
We have a mutual list here.
Yeah, right. There you go. It's ER list, yeah.
Maybe, if the UFC wants to keep doing super cards and super fights, maybe it's time for a DJ Cruz fight again.
He's certainly running out of challenges at flyweight, right?
And does Joe Benavidez get a title shot again?
Right.
He's still hasn't lost since his last title fight.
He earns it. It's just does Demetrius Johnson want to keep taking a risk of fighting someone so great?
He's lost to him twice and Cruz twice.
I know.
It's fun. But who else is there for DJ to fight at the same time? There's just so many things. John Jones returning, George St. Pierre returning.
True.
Are all things that I would like to see. It'll be interesting. It'll be the first full year under the new owner, so it'll be interesting to kind of see how everything unfolds this year as far as events and if it's the same kind of media structure we're seeing on a week-to-week basis, or if they change things up, or how the promotion for an event goes, like how will Fight Week be this week or this year, in July, those kind of things. So that'll be all interesting to see.
It will be. That's true.
Yeah, I guess that's pretty much my list.
It's a good one, man. It's a good one. I'll have the anti-GSP. I want GSP to stay rich and not fight again. That's the only thing that I'll be like. Although, listen, if he fights, I'm gonna in that moment be so excited, so excited to watch him fight.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in and watching an episode of the Extra Rounds podcast. As always, please subscribe on iTunes. Please leave a review and rate the show. We're also available in the Google Store. We just got into, I can't pronounce it, Stitcher.
That's what I say.
Podcast.
Stitcher? Is it French?
Yeah. It's another podcasting network that we've been added to. We're also in the TuneIn app if you want to listen to us there. Of course, every week we're on the Facebook page for Sports Illustrated MMA every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Central. Follow us on Twitter at Extra Rounds, and we'll let you know if we have what guests we have lined up for next week. And as always, you can call in to this number and leave a voicemail with your name and a question, and we'll answer it. We'll play the audio on the air, and we'll answer your question, much like we did with the comment section today. And thank you again, everyone who commented.
That was great.
The number to do that is 815-570-3923. Again, that's 815-570-3923. All right, and until next week, thanks, everybody.